Welcome to episode 5 of Engineering Success with our special guest, Kevin Lyons. Kevin is the owner and director of Lyons O'Neill, an award-winning independent provider of civil and structural design services to the construction industry. Having many years' experience in the design and delivery of a wide range of structures, Kevin's early career saw him working on the drawing board before training with Alan Baxter and Associates on historical buildings and then setting off to work on Cathay Pacific headquarters in Hong Kong. Kevin returned to London after 2 years abroad, where he found his niche working at Techniker on highly detailed and architecturally led structures. He then set up Lyons O'Neill with his business partner, Damian O'Neill, after a 2-year spell working with Heatherwick Studios as their in-house engineer. Kevin's interest lies in finding appropriate and buildable design solutions which are well communicated and coordinated. Lyons O'Neill bring together engineers from a variety of backgrounds, and the experience they bring reflects the quality of the solutions they produce. Welcome to Engineering Success, Kevin. It's great to have you on the podcast today. Can we start with how you first got into the engineering industry and who was the first company you worked for?
Thanks. I think like most people of our generation, you probably weren't as focused in where your career was going to go. I think when I was younger, I probably thought I was going to be an architect, but because I didn't really know what an engineer was. But I started doing my A-levels, and I lost focus of what I wanted to do. I wasn't working towards anything.
Yeah. So
I ended up going to the career centre, and I started a job the next day as a draftsman.
Right.
Which, retrospectively, I think was a very good thing for me.
Yeah.
And then, like a lot of people, you did your day release, got your ONC, HNC, and then it was actually the engineers where I was working at a small, practice in Bromley, who said to me, why don't you go to university and become an engineer? So I did, and never really looked back from there. So then I came out of university and worked for Alan Baxter's, who did a lot of historical building work, and it was a really good grounding on how to think. The amount of hand drawing work they did, my drafting, really came in useful.
Yeah.
And then I was there for a year, and we did a lot of talking about buildings. We didn't really build much. So my girlfriend at the time got a job in Hong Kong. Right. So like a lot of people's decisions, I followed my heart and went out to Hong Kong.
Brilliant.
Knocked on doors.
Yeah.
Basically spent a week knocking on doors. Got a job working on the airport, like a lot of people in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
With Harrison Sutherland at the time.
Okay.
Came back, went back out a week later, and started working in Hong Kong. And then, so I was out there for a couple of years.
Right.
And then started to think, well, these really big buildings, they're okay, but you could be working 3 or 4 years on one building, and I wanted a bit of more variety.
Yeah.
But, I'd seen the other side of the coin, so I was happy to come back. Came back, worked for Techniker, who were, high-end structural detailing.
Yeah.
And engineering, and, quite inspiring. Worked there for 8 years.
Right.
Really enjoyed lots of variety of materials. And I think it was all these things were very formative in getting me where I am at the moment. And then I worked with Thomas Heatherwick, being an in-house engineer at Thomas Heatherwick's office, which gave me the opportunity to see a lot of very different structures and more design-based. Mm-hmm. And then Damian O'Neill, who I worked with at Techniker, we decided to set up Lyons O'Neill.
Yeah.
At the start of the recession, we said to each other, what's the worst going to happen? If it doesn't work out, we'll get a job. Then the recession happens. And they're like, oh, that's the worst thing that happened. We didn't think about that, did we?
No.
But, you know, we were flexible, so we got through that.
Yeah. So who or what has been your biggest inspiration so far?
I think it's probably more of a what than a who. I think I've taken a little bit from everyone I've worked with.
Yeah.
But it's the exposure to lots of different things that's been the inspiration.
Right.
To lots of different people, the way they approach things.
Yeah.
Lots of different buildings, lots of different materials.
Right.
I think that's been the real inspiration to me.
Yeah.
You know, and seeing what we can achieve.
Yeah, as an industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just as people as well.
Yeah.
You know, whether that's a technical achievement or, you know, motivational achievement in getting the job through that nobody thought could be done or something like that.
Yeah. So we hear a lot of leaders have peculiar habits. Do you have any peculiar habits that you do every week or every month? Or?
I ride to work. For the past 20 years, I've ridden into London every day on the bike, and it gives me a bit of headspace.
Yeah.
You know, and I do a lot of thinking on the bike.
Yeah.
Not when it gets busy, but when I can, I do it. It's a chance to sort of start to plan my day and start thinking about what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
We also do a Monday morning meeting in the office, which is really useful. Really, you know, just a bit of general osmosis, you know, of what everybody's doing. You know, you can start to feel where the issues are, where jobs are, and it helps me get a good overview of, you know, what people are feeling like.
Yeah. So leading from that, you know, what attributes do you need to, you know, be the head of Lyons O'Neill?
I think I'm trying to teach myself to listen more. I think listening and being human are really important skills. I think it was like General Patton said, you shouldn't tell you should tell people where you want to get, not how to get there, and they'll really surprise you how they get there. Yeah. So that's what I try and do. I try and guide people in where I want us to be, rather than telling them how to get there. I try not to control it. And, you know, just being consistent, I think, is really important. Yeah. And, you know, I always try and have the staff's back as well, you know, so they feel supported. Yeah.
So what have you enjoyed the most so far in your career? Maybe Hong Kong?
Well, it's funny you say that. I think as a career, you can take it anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, engineering's engineering all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, Hong Kong was part of the UK, so or dependent. So it was very easy to get a job there.
Yeah.
But the skills are transferable, so you can work. You know, I look on Facebook and things, and lots of my university friends living in Australia. You know, living all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, the education they receive here is great, and it can take you anywhere. So I think I've really enjoyed the freedom it's been given me.
Right. Yeah. So what challenges do you face on a weekly basis?
I think the biggest challenge I find is letting people make mistakes on your watch.
Right.
Because everything I've learned is through a mistake I made, or the most important lessons, you know, and not making them again. Yeah. I remember former director of me, I scaled a beam wrong. You know, I was a 10 metre beam, I'd scaled it as 5 metres. My business partner often brings up. And he made me phone the client and tell them what I'd done.
Right.
And I think he probably did it because he didn't want to do it. But I remember that conversation, and I remember the client being very human and saying, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, this is what we're going to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I try and so you feel the heat of the fire a little bit, and why you're doing it, and what you're doing is really important. So my challenge is letting people do that, and not hiding their mistakes. Yeah, you know, try not to let my face drop. Yeah, because you know when you're the boss, people. It took me a while to realise people just bring you problems. You know, people very rarely come and go, look at this, I do this, it's brilliant. They come when they can't. They can't do something. So I think the challenges are allowing that to happen. And the one thing I learned is there's always an answer. Sleep on it. Come back in the morning. You'll work through an answer. So the challenges are allowing people to do that, and also just like managing the workload. I act as a sort of buffer at the front of the company. People think you just the engineers think when one job's finished, the next one's just going to come along and fit in perfectly.
That's right.
And I spend my life managing, trying to work out where people are in their jobs. They might think they're somewhere, but they're not necessarily always there. And then trying to blend in the new projects, because we're really hot on consistency and ownership of projects. So we don't give a job to someone one week and then give it to someone else another week. We really try to work hard to manage that. So those are the challenges.
So what would your number one piece of advice be for somebody wanting to start a career in engineering today?
I think the engineering the engineering industry that I started in is going to be very different. But I think I've been lucky in the exposure to lots of things. That's what I'd say to people is expose yourself to different materials, different building systems. Even if you can't do it through your day-to-day work, just read about it. There's plenty of resource out there nowadays. And expose yourself to it, because that cross-pollination of ideas is really important. And the engineers, I think, of the next 15, 20 years are going to have to be a lot more creative than the open university engineers with the beards of the 80s. You're gonna have to react quicker. You've got so many more tools. We talk about the engineering toolkit. The tools. There's no good or bad design. There's or right or wrong design. There's appropriate designs. And what we push hard for is to pick appropriate materials and solutions. So understanding the limitations and the possibilities of different materials and systems is the most important thing, because the rest is processing it. And computers will start to process a lot more of the stuff we used to process.
So why do you feel there's been a shortage in the engineering industry?
I think it's a lot of it's a UK issue and an historical issue because of class system. I think traditionally architects were the blue collar workers that dealt with the builders that the client didn't really want to deal with. And I've still seen some examples of that. And we've been talking about how 15 years ago, all our work came through architects, and often you had two clients. You had the architect who was your client, and you had the client who was your client. Now we are much more exposed to our clients. So I think traditionally, the engineering profession has been a hidden profession. Nobody really understands what we do. So, I think an example of that was when the Millennium Bridge was built. It was a Foster's Bridge. In the news, on the BBC News, it's a Foster's Bridge. And as soon as it started wobbling, it became an Arab's Bridge. And then nobody marvelled at the fact that was sorted out quite quickly, that problem. And Arabs, once they got their head around it, sorted it. And nobody celebrates that sort of thing. I just don't. I think and also as a breed, we're probably a bit more humble. We don't really necessarily go around shouting about our work. So I think I think it's just not got enough exposure. And I think our institutions are probably the ones who need to push it. I mean, we deal with it individually and, living our lives by example. We're taking on work experience people. I've got friends saying, "Oh, my son's about to take his GCSEs. Can you take him on?" We're more than happy to, because we want to show them it's a great profession.
So do you think, as a profession, we should be promoting more? And do you think every company's got a responsibility to promote more?
I think we are promoting more.
Yeah.
I think, maybe I'm in an echo chamber of engineering promotion, but I see everybody doing it on LinkedIn and stuff like that. There's a lot of noise out there generally. So to become the standout voice is quite difficult.
Yeah.
And people don't necessarily come across us that much in their everyday life. Yeah. They understand the engineering of a car because, most people have got cars, but, they don't understand what, people only normally find out about engineers when stuff goes wrong.
Yeah.
Because all the time we're doing our job properly or within limits, nobody ever sees it.
It's invisible, isn't it?
It's invisible.
Yeah. So what are the biggest changes that you've seen in engineering since you started work?
I think it's our tools and communication tools.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about 50% of what we do is the designing of a structure. 50% of what we do is communicating it.
Yeah.
We are constantly changing the way we work to use the new tools, which are predominantly visualization tools.
Yeah.
People talk about BIM. A BIM's a process. It's not a model.
That's
3D modeling's been around for a long time.
Yes.
But we're still at this place where we create models in 3D, yet we convert them back to 2D for people to work on site.
Yeah.
And the software's not very good at converting it back to 2D.
Yeah.
So, we were experimenting with, we put QR codes on our drawing so people can scan the drawings and then see the model on their phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've seen people on site looking at the drainage layout in 3D on their phones.
Right.
So, that the tools for communication have really, really pushed on. And also the math side of things is less important.
Yeah.
Understanding and feel for numbers is really important, but the ability to process repetitive calculations, computers are doing it.
Yeah.
And, and if we don't, what that does is it frees us up to do what I think is the more important thing, about understanding systems and trying different things.
Yeah.
The iStruct did an edition of their journal a year or so ago, and it looked at computers through time, and they had articles back from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
And each one of those articles said rubbish in, rubbish out. So, what we're changing is focusing on more on the information that goes in and out.
Yeah.
Basically, not on whether a decimal point's in the right or wrong place.
Yeah. So I read your article in Construction UK magazine about the future of construction workforce. How do you see engineering changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot more data driven. We're going to be able to get more feedback on our buildings. I think adaptive structures are really quite exciting. Being able to design a building that responds to the loads. So many of our buildings we design, there's a critical loading scenario that probably is only going to happen once in its life, if ever. Yet the whole building is designed to resist that.
Yeah.
If you could design a system that resisted that were activated when that load is, you can get rid of a load of waste. You should have a much more economical building. So I think ultimately, probably not in my engineering lifetime.
Will we get to it?
Yeah, I think that's where we'll be. We'll have a lot more adaptive structures that respond to loading scenarios.
Right.
I mean, you're already seeing it in a lot of the high-rise buildings and earthquake resistance. It's a form of adaptive. I mean, damping is a sort of form of adaptive structures. But managing deflection. I was interviewing someone the other day, and we were talking about how you model stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, you should be just modelling it under its self-weight and seeing how it deflects. I said, how many times have you designed an element and it's really deflection that governs the design?
Yeah.
You know, and the young lady was saying, well, probably most of the time. So if we can, you know, get stuff that, if we can adapt to that and react to that, we can get much more efficient use out of materials.
Yeah.
So I think potentially that's where it's going.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Yeah. So how do you keep yourself motivated?
Good question. I think always learning.
Yeah.
It's always something. You know, I'm not afraid to say I'm learning every day on this job.
Yeah.
And we've got a job down in Hailsham in East Sussex that's sliding downhill, and I've learned so much about slope stability.
Yeah.
You know, what the key signs are. You know, you kind of rehydrate a bit of knowledge from university in geology, but to see it in the real world is and that satisfaction of solving a problem and, you know, coming up with the appropriate solution. That's what keeps me motivated, I think.
Right. So really, I mean, leading on from that, you know, you said about developing yourself. How do you continually develop yourself?
I do a bit of work for the institution in interviewing for the Part 3 exam, chartership exam.
Yeah.
But I think more looking outside my industry and seeing other people are doing it. Yeah. I mean, I found myself watching a BBC4 thing on psychographics the other night, you know, and about the whole Trump campaign and how they were profiling people.
Right.
But, the parallels are on data-led industry, or data-led information that will come into our industry. So always trying to talk to people who are leaders not in my industry.
Yeah.
It's always good to speak to, you know, other engineers, but I like to see what's going on outside our bubble.
Yeah,
and see if there's any of that cross-pollination that can bring us in.
Yeah.
So, you know, the TED's talks and things like that. The resources out there are, you know, plentiful.
Yeah. So if you could change any part of your career, would you change anything?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't change a thing.
It's always
I think birds of a feather flock together. I think you make a lot of subconscious decisions about your career path.
Yeah.
And I can see my career path's been quite eclectic, but what I like to think is my pragmatic and well-rounded approach to engineering is a function that I've seen so much.
Yeah.
Different cultures, how different cultures do it, and also just being exposed to lots of different materials. So I would not, and I certainly wouldn't have changed the drawing side of my career. Although that wasn't planned.
Yeah.
The ability to communicate through sketching is really important.
Yeah.
We talk about sketching at an early stage on the project because, you know, you can gauge a client through sketching.
Yeah.
If I take a stage 2 drawing to a meeting and we've done it in Revit, you know, the client can look at that and think, well, can we not build it from that? That looks finished to me.
Yeah.
But if I take a hand sketch,
there's
a subtlety to that communication in the fact that they understand that's not finished and they can influence it.
Yeah.
You know, we want to engage people. So hand drawings are quite engaging. So that part of my my education, although not planned, was really important.
Yeah. So have you had any mentors?
I was thinking about that, and I don't think I've had any one. I think I've got a business partner who's really well aligned, but a great yin to my yang.
Yeah.
You know, so we both want the same thing. So we kind of mentor each other through it. I think, you know, my wife's quite a good touchstone when it comes to things. You know, she used to work she's worked for a bank. You know, so she's quite realistic in the business side of things.
Yeah.
As you know, as we say, you know, first thing she said to me is turnover's vanity and profit sanity, and you know those are watchwords for us. So I think it's kind of like my career. I take bits from everyone.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't rely on one source of a mentor.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I've had mentors in different companies where I've worked, or people that I've followed, if you like, and taken advice from them. And I think that's how you've got to be, to expose yourself to different things.
Yeah, I'd say it's so important.
Yeah. So, owning Lyons O'Neill, what does the future hold for you?
I think that's the hardest one to answer.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be continuing learning and continuing adaptation. I think we've got to where we are by being flexible.
Yeah.
And by being able to adapt to the changing industry. I say to the young guys, the industry that I leave is going to be completely different to the one you leave.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you look about the automation in the world, and there's a real issue is whether there's going to be as many jobs as there was.
Yeah.
Or I think probably it's probably going to open up more opportunities. There'll be different jobs for different people.
Yeah.
So I think the future holds change, is what I'd say.
Yeah.
And if you fight that change, you're gonna be like the dinosaurs.
Lose. Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
You've got to work with it and embrace it.
Yeah.
So that's what I think has changed.
Kevin, thank you very much for your time.
It's been a pleasure.
Great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Cheers. Join us next time on Engineering Success for more insights from successful and inspirational leaders within the engineering and construction industries. I would love you to subscribe to the podcast and please leave a rating and review. Have an amazing week and see you next time on Engineering Success.